My name's Phil Haig. I lead early career programs here at Visa. I'm thrilled to join you today alongside our guests who will introduce themselves a bit later in the call. But we have Patricia Gamboa, who is the Senior Director here in our cybersecurity team at Visa, Abigail Allen, an Apprenticeship and Training Program Specialist for the Department of Labour, Kefa Masaki, one of our wonderful apprentices, who's part of our first cybersecurity cohort at Visa. So you'll hear from all of those folks later in the hour, but I also want to introduce you to my co-host today, Natalie Miller, and I'll let Natalie introduce herself.
Wonderful. Thank you, Phil. Yes, this has been a long time in the making, this webinar of bringing everyone together and sharing our story. And I'm really excited to share this story with you. But let's kind of level set before we jump in. Many of you may know that this is National Apprenticeship Week. And this year's theme is really based on the fact that apprenticeship is becoming such an integral part of the workforce development in organizations. For all of us that are in this space, this is essentially the Super Bowl celebration of a registered apprenticeship. So all week there's been events hosted by other intermediaries, employers, other training providers. And so if you can go and look on the Department of Labor website, you can see all of them. It's really amazing when you see the breadth and depth of this work, of how many organizations, labor partners, workforce development, education partners are really coming together to really showcase the tremendous success and value of registered apprenticeship. This year's theme has been called is Super Highway to Good Jobs, and each day has a theme. Today's theme is registered apprenticeship for veterans and federal employees. When we speak with Kefa later on, you'll see why we selected this day, because he is a veteran, and it is all about recognizing the critical role of apprenticeship in building our economy, advancing racial and gender equality, and also building these really great talent and building pipeline to good jobs, and also serving underserved communities. This is really also recognizing and celebrating again that the prominence that registered apprenticeship has received as being a proven and industry-driven training and talent development model. It's a model that not only expedites the pathways into good jobs, but it significantly improves diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the workplace. You'll hear about all of that today. And registered apprenticeship is also being recognized as a key strategy now for many organizations as another pathway for organizations to create their talent, which you'll hear today when we talk with Patricia and Phil. And it's also really being recognized as one of these pipelines for organizations as we hear about all these workforce shortages in areas like teaching, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, which we're talking about today, clean energy, and also in pharmaceuticals. So as we're talking today about creating a diverse cyber workforce specifically at Visa, know that there's a broader workforce and context that we're talking about with National Apprenticeship Week and the pivotal role that apprenticeships play in shaping our future.
That's right, Natalie. I'm really looking forward to talking about how we are embracing apprenticeship as a model here at Visa, not just in the US, but worldwide. Obviously, we'll speak specifically to our US-based program today and our partnership with Apprenti, so let's jump in.
Yeah, it sounds great. I've often said, and I've said this to you many, many times, that Visa has been such a wonderful partner to work with. And so I feel like there's such a big story to tell here. But you've had apprenticeships, specifically cyber apprenticeships in the UK and Singapore. So walk us through what motivated Visa to start this apprenticeship program here in the US.
Absolutely. And I think Visa is really trying to embrace this model of talent for our workforce globally, as you've mentioned. And I think in the UK and in Singapore, they're really mature models, and that's largely down to government subsidies that are available, and probably a more mature understanding of what apprenticeship is within those societies. But let me take a step back and just start by level setting for the audience, because if anyone's like me, when I first applied to work for a job at Visa, I had very little understanding of what we actually do as an organization. But just to do a bit of a Visa 101 for people, we are a payments network. So we facilitate transactions between us as consumers and merchants, between issuing banks and acquiring banks. What that means is that we process over 65,000 transactions per second. So our network is one of the most attacked networks in the world. If you think about all of that financial information that's going over our network every second, that's very attractive to cyber hackers. So we need top quality cyber talent in our workforce to ensure the safety of our network, essentially. So there is a bit of a supply and demand issue in the US and globally right now for cyber talent, and apprenticeship is just one of the mechanisms that we're using to address that shortage. There are other things that we're looking at from a training perspective, and other forms of talent, such as hiring veterans, as you mentioned previously. That kind of college to employer pipeline is becoming extremely competitive. Every year it's becoming more and more competitive, and that's for a number of different reasons. So we see declining college admission rates, declining birth rates, and then obviously the number of vacancies that we're seeing every year for cyber talent is increasing exponentially. So that means that before long, we end up not having enough bodies to fill the roles that we need to fill to keep our network running smoothly. And I think the second reason that we're choosing to invest in this type of talent is to really address some of the inequities that exist in the education system in the US and in the Western world in generally. So if you think about the fact that women are still less likely to study STEM subjects and therefore less likely to end up in cyber careers, the fact that the education system is prohibitively expensive if you're going to study a 4-year college degree, this can disadvantage people from different demographic groups. And we see people coming out with 4-year computer science degrees tend to be disproportionately male, disproportionately white, disproportionately wealthy. So apprenticeship is a mechanism to really give people that maybe didn't have the best of fit with the traditional education system a second chance at those jobs within the technology industry. And I think that has been a real core driver for us within Visa to start adopting this particular model.
Well, and I think as we were working with you, that's our mission at Apprenti, right? Is to create these pathways for individuals that are historically underrepresented in tech, and that's why this worked so well. I think that, you know, when we started looking at, well, we'll talk later about some of your future programs, right, that you're looking at in terms of what that looks like. You know, there's always a kind of a focus in terms of the things that you're really wanting to do. And as these cybersecurity jobs, I think it was estimated that there's like 700,000 open tech roles at the end of last year, just in the United States. So where is that talent going to come from? And it really is the obligation, I think, and we think that it's employers that really are stepping up, but really it's the apprentices that are doing, you know, a lot of the work, as well as managers and mentors. And so I'm curious, as we sit here today, and you look back, always like hindsight's always 2020, right? And so as we look back, when you think about standing up an apprenticeship program in the US, because you've done it successfully over in Singapore and the UK, what are some key insights? What are some key learnings that you and the team have really kind of recognized?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure anyone with a key ear has already identified the fact that I'm British from the accent. So I had a lot of experience working with apprenticeship programs in the UK before I moved to the US. I moved to San Francisco a couple of years ago. And one of the things that I was really surprised about here was the real intrinsic lack of understanding about what an apprenticeship program actually is. And so one of the core things I would say to anyone looking to start an apprenticeship program for the first time in the US is really focusing on education, education, education. To help people level set and understand what it means to be an apprentice in 2023. I think that the word apprenticeship or apprentice tends to conjure up a lot of connotations around people doing more trade-based work, so things like plumbing, electrician, that kind of stuff, and not necessarily the type of roles that you would find situated in a large modern corporate. So I think having to really take a step back and educate, bring everyone up to speed around what this type of program is, what it can offer and what it can do for our organization has been one of the real fundamental things. And I think before we even got to the point of engaging with suppliers, we probably spent a good year just educating folks internally around what this model of talent was and what it was going to do for our organization. One of the key things that I always try and explain to managers and to leaders is that this is about a talent investment. It's a training and development program. It's not about hiring people for immediate productivity today. So, when we look to hire early career talent straight out of college, the mindset of that hiring manager is always, what can you do for me today? And I'm encouraging them to think more about what can you do for me tomorrow? Really, it's more about thinking when you're hiring an apprentice, how can we take this person and develop them from a skills perspective to do these jobs just as well as anyone else. But it may take us a little longer to get them there because they're approaching it from a point of view of really baseline understanding at the outset. So I think really having to kind of educate everyone and bring them up to speed and get everyone bought into the concept is one of the things that you kind of underestimate sometimes how long that period is going to take. The second thing I would say is really making sure that you build a program from a collaborative space. I think the partnership that we have with you guys at Apprenti is really fundamental to this, but even internally, it definitely takes a village, right? And I think our program has been so successful so far because everyone has come along with us on this journey. So our program internally at Visa is owned by our talent function, by myself and by people in my team. But we work very, very closely with our people business partnering group. We work very, very closely with the people that are going to be line managing these folks, such as Patty, that we're going to hear from later. And I think making sure that everyone has a shared understanding of what we're trying to achieve and has bought into the design of the program is really clear. And you have to be very intentional about how you're using this type of model too. I think in the past, when Visa had experimented with some of these similar types of programs, we hadn't really thought out how this was going to be feeding into our larger workforce and into some of the core roles that we're trying to pipeline talent for. And it was not successful in the end because we were almost othering them from the outset and treating them as a kind of, separate bucket of talent away from all of our core roles. And I think that's something that we've been really intentional about trying to address this time. We want our apprentices to have careers with us within this organization and to be just as successful as anyone else that comes in through any other mechanism.
And that's, I think, been one of the really impressive pieces as an external partner and working with you and seeing how you integrate them through the induction once the related technical instruction happens, and how you brought all of the apprentices together and really got kind of an anchoring in what the world of Visa is all about and what the expectations are. And I think that was something of seeing how managers were even integrated into this through the related technical instruction piece. While the apprentices were in training, there was work with I mean, I think you just did such an amazing job of really making sure that there was this intertwined understanding of, we are all pointing to the North Star of, this is a talent development program. We want to bring that. We want jobs at the end of this whole program, which can be about a year with it's the RTI and on the job training as well. So the other is, and so when you start to think about the future, so I know the answer to this question, which is really exciting, but think of what is this had in terms of the impact on your talent pipeline, your workforce diversity, as you've gone through and spoken with managers. It sounds like they're really excited as they got educated, which is such a big part of this, right? Implementation is education. But how has this apprenticeship program really impacted your talent pipeline and your diversity that you're seeing in specifically cyber here in the United States, but also UK and Singapore?
Yeah, I think it helped. Apprenticeship is a way of addressing diversity needs that you have, and that's the reason why it can look very different from market to market. In Singapore, it's very much focused on hiring local Singaporean talent that often get shut out of particular roles because they're hiring expats into those opportunities. Now, obviously, we're trying to address different diversity and inequity issues in the US. But diversity is often a fundamental driver for these types of programs. And I think it's the opportunity that we have to really address some of the inequities we have in our workforce in the technology sector in specifically, is huge, because I think if you look at, just as I mentioned earlier, the proportions of people from particular demographics that are coming out of colleges, it's a very, very small talent pool that you're looking to fish in. And of course, every other tech company is looking to do the same thing. And this is really more like broadening the aperture of people that are able to come in and access opportunities within your organization. And I think we have to understand that traditional mainstream education as it is set up is not fit for everyone. You know, there's lots of reasons why people have barriers to education. I grew up neurodivergent and gay in the 90s. I struggled in traditional mainstream education. Does that mean that I'm not fit for a role within a big corporate organization? No, it doesn't. But there's certain opportunities that are lacking for people if they haven't performed well through high school, through university. And apprenticeship is a way of giving those people a second opportunity at these kind of quality careers within big corporate organizations. So if we look at the cohort that we just hired in the last year, 90% of them meet one of the diversity metrics that we were looking to focus on for our particular program. So really looking to hire more female talent into technology, more underrepresented talent, Black, African American, Latinx talent, and veterans as well. And that's something that we can continue doing. And if we scale the program, and the plan is to move into lots of different skill sets this year. So we're hiring software developers as well as cybersecurity engineers this year. The opportunity for us to continue to diversify our workforce is huge.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I know that if anyone is interested, in the chat, Diana has dropped in, I think it's working. I saw a couple of chats that said that maybe it wasn't. So hopefully we're back on track. But there is a way for everyone to apply to visa. So I'll just take this moment, and then Phil, maybe you can kind of talk about what the timing of this is. But the process is that if you are interested, because I see a lot of people are interested in apprenticeship, which I love. So go to that link. You'll need to create a profile. There's an assessment that you'll take. And then once you've passed that assessment, then that's when you'll start to do some screening. And Phil, you can talk about what it looks like for next year, and then the timing, and then we can jump into the rest of the panel.
Yeah, absolutely. We are super excited to receive interest from people. So if you do have an interest in apprenticeship, then please do feel free to follow the link that Natalie just mentioned. We are expanding the number of roles we're hiring this year. We're focused primarily on a few different locations in the US. So Ashburn in Virginia, Atlanta, Austin are our probably 3 primary hiring locations, but there's the potential for a couple of other locations as well. And we will be hiring across software development and cybersecurity profiles this year. But it's just one application, and then we'll discuss your fit as you go through the process. We will begin screening in January, and we're looking to make hires around March. And over that time, you're going to go through a recruiting process. But I would say don't fear if you're somebody that is fearful and scared of interviews. Don't worry. I think none of us particularly love interviews, but our interview process for apprenticeship is really focused on getting to know you, and is looking for passion and interest and that ability to learn technology. We're not expecting you to have tons and tons of background experience or anything like that. So I would say, don't feel, oh, I'm not qualified or anything like that. We're not looking for previous experience. We're really looking for the individual. So don't hesitate to apply.
And where are the geographies? What cities will these apprenticeships be?
Yeah, so we're looking in 3 locations: Atlanta, Austin, and Ashburn. But we are also exploring a couple of our other hiring locations potentially as well. So areas like Denver. We're still in the process of firming up exactly where they're going to be situated. Great. Shall we move on to introducing some of our other speakers? You're probably a bit tired of listening to me and Natalie talking solidly for 20 minutes. So I'd love to introduce some of the other folks that we have on the call today. Maybe we do a quick roundtable of introductions first, and then jump into some of the questions that we have for each individual. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Patricia Gamboa, who's the Senior Director in our cybersecurity team. Patty, do you want to come on and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everyone. My name is Patricia Gamboa. As Phil mentioned, I am the Senior Director for our Quality Assurance team in the Identity and Access Management space under the cybersecurity organization here at Visa. I've been with Visa for about 7 years, in the tech industry for about 26 years. So I've been around a little while, and super excited to be part of this first. I was very thrilled when I was asked to be part of the apprenticeship program in this first round. So yeah.
Fabulous. And we'll jump into asking you some more questions in just a second,
Sure.
Patty. I'd love to welcome Abigail Allen from the Department of Labour. Abigail, if you can jump on and just tell us a little bit about yourself too.
Hi, it's morning here. I'm in San Diego, Region 6 of the Office of Apprenticeship. So good morning to anybody on the Pacific Coast like me. I'm a program specialist with the Office of Apprenticeship, and cybersecurity is my industry of focus. So thank you for having me, and I'm so happy to be here with Natalie and Apprenti and you, Philip with Visa, and Patty.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And then last but by no means least, I'd like to welcome Kefa Masaki, who's one of our apprentices on the cyber program. If you can jump on and just tell the crowd a little bit about yourself, Kefa.
Sure, Ken. My name is Kefa Masaki, and I was born in Kenya. I served in the military for about 10 years. I was a medic. And once I separated from the military, I joined some IT companies in Dallas. And I was able to get an opportunity to join Visa as a cybersecurity apprentice. So I'm currently an apprentice, and I'm on job training. That's going to be probably till next September. So I'm excited, and I'm with Patty is my manager, and I'm in the IAM team, QA, Identity Access Management. So I'll be here to answer any questions that you guys have once we do some Q&A. Thank you.
Fabulous, thank you. Okay, we're going to jump in to ask some questions of our panel now. So Patty, I wanted to come to you first and ask you a little bit about your experience working with the apprenticeship program. So I think, you've been on this journey with me since the very start. So can you tell us a bit about what your apprenticeship experience has been like, in particular, kind of, how you became involved in the program and what your understanding was of apprenticeship at the start, and how it's grown over the course of the program as we've been building it?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was first approached about the apprenticeship program, as you mentioned earlier, I think I had a different idea of what that might be. I think my first, reaction was, are we getting high school students to come and start, their careers early? So that was, I think, the biggest misconception that I had personally. But as I was involved in developing also the program for the US, knowing that I was also going to be participating in the program as a manager, as one of the apprentice managers, I had a vested interest, obviously, in developing this framework and making sure that everything, was making sense from a perspective of a people leader as well. I would say, as we were going through and trying to speak to other managers as well who would be responsible for apprentices, it was a lot of the educating as well in terms of what the expectations were, what we were looking for. I think there was a little bit of apprehension just because of the unknowns that people had. And, at the end of it all, though, we had some great candidates, probably more, we had a lot of great candidates, some of which we couldn't even take onto the program because we didn't have that many available, spots that we could fill. So it was super exciting. I think a lot of people managers came around after the fact, wanting or asking about more apprentices, some others that were outside of the areas of focus for this first cohort. So,
and
it's been an exciting journey.
You can't get much more of a recommendation than them asking for more, can you? I think that's always a good sign if they're saying we want more of this. How would you say having an apprentice in your team has enhanced the work that your team are doing and the department as a whole?
I would say it in the sense of the whole spirit of apprenticeship is it's bringing so much diversity to our team, right? A new way of potentially a new way of learning, a new way of educating those that are, you cannot make assumptions that someone knows, what a traditional 4-year degree person background might come with. And it's just been super exciting to hear, you know, kind of the experiences that our apprentices have brought to the team. So
And yeah, I completely agree. The team that I had in Europe, I had apprentices regularly on my own team, and they just tended to bring a completely different perspective and different way of looking at problems and issues that, you know, were those business challenges than other members of my team did. So I think it just adds to a richness and a texture to the dialogue that you're having in teams. Abigail, I'd love to come to you now and just ask you to shed a little bit of light on the significance of registered apprenticeships in shaping the future of work.
Thank you. So apprenticeships really helped build America, you know, from the roads we drive on, the electricity that runs to our homes and offices, the telecommunication towers that allow us to have this meeting and interact with each other. Those all have apprenticeship embedded in their workforce already. So when we look at what apprenticeship has accomplished so far, am I freezing? I'm sorry. I see that it's freezing. So when we really look at what apprenticeship has accomplished so far, we now can take those and incorporate that into the cybersecurity workforce to help meet those needs as well. We're really seeing a resurgence of an appreciation for apprenticeship right now. And we at OA have acknowledged that these new roles need customized work plans and curriculum. And that's why we've contracted with Apprenti and others to help us build this new cybersecurity workforce.
Yeah, it's certainly been quite a road, hasn't it? And a journey together. I know I've really enjoyed seeing what I've been with Apprenti 18 months, and in that time I've gotten to work with you and Phil. And in that time, as we've talked about the sort of recognition, even seeing of skills-based hiring, going from less of a requirement of a 4-year degree to really opening up what this pipeline might look like. And so as you talk with organizations, I'm curious, you know, what are I know we've kind of covered this, but you know, what are their reasons for creating apprenticeships more broadly? Maybe not, and why are they doing it? Why is it important for those organizations to create these apprenticeship programs?
Well, like Philip said, it's an investment, and good organizations realize this. Unfortunately, today, especially with social media, there's such a perception that there should be a quick turnaround to everything, you know, whether it's a quick cryptocurrency or diet or something. Everybody wants something to happen immediately, but that's not how apprenticeship works. It is a grow your own model. You don't plant a seed one day and come out and pull a carrot the next day, you know. That's why we just appreciate Visa so much for taking this on and Apprenti and speaking to it and especially since you have this experience at a worldwide level and using your voice to promote apprenticeship. We really appreciate that. And we understand, you know, there is a financial burden at first, and that's why we have invested in these intermediaries that can help offset that cost until it really is running for that first cycle and you see that return on investment. And if you want to see, we have commissioned studies on the return on investment for employers. So that's all available on our website, apprenticeship.gov. I won't bore everybody with those facts and figures because it does seem like we have a lot of career seekers in the audience.
Yeah, the DOL, I have been really impressed, especially this last year with that just came out, the Academy, the Registered Apprenticeship Academy that just launched this week. So there is so many resources that you have created for apprentices, for intermediaries like us, excuse me, and then employers like Phil. And so when you're working with employers, when you're working with apprentices, what kind of support can they expect from the DOL and from your team?
Well, that's great. So not only do we have and I'm speaking to cyber especially, but going back to our theme even for today is veterans and federal employees. So we work interagency with other agencies on a federal level. So our co-industry partners are NICE, which is the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, and that's through the Department of Commerce, and NIST. So if you are in any kind of cyber curriculum development, you're very familiar with the NIST framework. And they even have their own community of interest that's completely dedicated to apprenticeships. And then we have our community of practice for employers and program sponsors to participate in. So when you register an apprenticeship, you have an umbrella, of support over you. And then we also work with the Office of the National Cyber Director and many other federal agencies that utilize apprenticeship to fill government positions like the DoD, NASA, Departments of the Interior, Energy, Justice, just to name a few. So you have this whole broad perspective of what the workforce situation is like in America, and we're striving to fill it, and we're doing a great job. And then also we know that the curriculum involving cyber is constantly evolving, like Philip was saying again. Using apprenticeship as a model, employers and program sponsors can customize their own curriculum and then have the GI Bill that the veterans can utilize be able to get that. And it doesn't have to go through a college like most veterans traditionally have to use their GI Bill to go through.
And so I just saw a question that came up in the chat that I think is a great question for you, which is someone has asked, can you recommend other apprenticeship programs for technology? And so through the DOL, maybe you can answer that question.
So absolutely, yes. We do have an apprenticeship finder on our website. And if you want to get into cyber, I would absolutely suggest, and you don't have to just do one apprenticeship. You can do multiple apprenticeships, starting at an IT apprenticeship, help desk, because cyber, it's not always an entry-level position. You need to have some skills in the industry, some skills with technology first. So start, if you don't already have that, if you're not a veteran who has that experience, go ahead and look at those jobs like help desk and IT, maybe not shoot straight for cyber at the first, but there is apprenticeship.gov, and we do have the apprenticeship finder there.
Great. So I think it's time to shift, and I know that we're all really excited to have this conversation with Kefa, who is really going to share his story. We've sort of alluded, and he talked about his background. I will tell you that, as Phil said, this cohort that's been working at Visa has been wonderful to watch, and Kefa has such a wonderful story to share with you all, and some of you may see a lot of yourself in him. And so, let's jump into this. And so tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, I know you talked about that you had your military service, you were in the military for 10 years. So what inspired you to make this transition from the military to cybersecurity?
That's a great question. Yeah. So, like I said, I was in the military, and during my transition, so we normally have SFL TAP, which is a program that helps transition veterans get employment in the civilian world. So I was introduced to Apprenti, and the issue I had most of the time is every time I was looking for job opportunities, they want experience, some type of experience, even if it's an entry-level position. So Apprenti gives you an opportunity to get into an IT world. You go through boot camp, and then you start on the job training. And that eliminates a little bit of the challenges you get as an entry-level person in IT, because you're able to get time to go to work and earn critical skills in IT, and while still learning to an industry-level certification. So you get your Network Plus, your Security Plus certifications that are very, very valuable in a job market. So that was very helpful on my end, because getting out, I got a job as an IT help desk, and I worked as a configuration technician. So I had a little bit of experience, but it wasn't at the level where you can say, yeah, you're ready to get into the cyber world. But apprenticeship is one of those programs that really was helpful for me to make my transition from the military to civilian world very, very easy. Yeah.
And would you recommend, I'm seeing in the chat here that people have gone and they've done some DevOps works and UX. So going into this, you had some IT knowledge before, and before you went into this, but what level of cybersecurity experience did you have? Are there recommendations that you have for people who are interested in getting into a cybersecurity apprenticeship or an IT apprenticeship, of maybe some things that they might consider doing?
Yes. So for me, I did. I went to school for cybersecurity, so I did a diploma in cybersecurity. So if you take a education course while you guys are waiting to apply or to get a response back, do some preparation. That will be very much helpful you when you start in the career itself. So I was able to get a Security Plus certification before I started my apprenticeship. So that was very helpful because with my job that I have, you kind of need a little bit of knowledge in terms of how networks work, how securities work, and then languages will be very important. If you do Linux or Python language, get a little bit of experience because that will come in handy when you actually start working. Because you still can be able to be successful, but then it makes it easier when you're in the job market, when you have that experience. And I was able to work as a senior technician for Raytheon as well for a little bit. So I was able to work in an admin role, so to kind of know how you work with an admin, and that helps in my current role because I'm in IAM, which is Identity Access Management. So working with Active Directory helps me, have that experience and exposure in IT. So that would be very helpful. Yeah.
Great. That's great advice. I love that.
Mhm.
And so when you look at your experience from military, when you look at your experience from your programs before you went into the apprenticeship, talk a little bit about, it can be a lot to jump into a cybersecurity team after going through the boot camp.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's a whole new world, right? And
Yes.
so I know that you've had great managers like Patricia and the team, Phil's team, but talk a little bit about what that transition was like of going from, on the job training into on the job training, and where did you pull from in terms of your own knowledge and skills and abilities to really make that transition successful? What did that look like?
Sure. So the way it worked for us is you do boot camp for 4 months. So we started in May and graduated in September. So within those 4 months, you are expected to have a Security Plus or Network Plus certification before you start on the job training. And then while you're on the job training, you study towards your CISA Plus certification. So it was challenging in terms of the learning curve. So coming from I was a medic in the military, so it was a medical background to IT. And it was a little challenging because you have to learn a lot of new skills, new level of education in IT. And what helped me was the boot camp, because while at boot camp, you're fully employed, so you don't have to work. And so you have enough time to devote to study and get those certifications done. So, and then we have amazing teachers because, you're online in class, you have all the time to study. So if you devote yourself the time, and we have a lot of study materials to use. Udemy, you have YouTube, you have, with the CompTIA as well, the Boot Academy, they have amazing materials. So that was helpful for us to study. And once you finish, you go to on the job training. That helps now because you have a little background. Now you can apply what you learned in boot camp on the job day-to-day environment. And now coming to on a job training, it's balancing the work itself with the continued learning, because for us as an apprentice, you're going to continue learning because we still have other certifications you have to accomplish before next year. So you have to balance between your work requirements plus what you need to your certifications that you have to achieve. So finding that balance was a little challenging, but it's a learning experience, and I'm continuing to kind of devote time to the study and devote time to work. And the amazing thing about Visa is the company and the managers, your coworkers, they are very, very helpful. There are resources everywhere for you to succeed. And that's what they focus on, is succeeding for us. And you are paired with a technical guide who helps you through your task. So whenever you're assigned a task at work, you have a technical guide that will guide you through. So if you have any questions, you can ask your guide, you can ask your coworkers, you can ask the developers that you work with to be able to help you succeed. So it's having that support system in Visa that helps us succeed as apprentice. Yeah.
That is quite the testament for the team that you're working in terms of being able to support you. But it sounds like you're also given a lot of space to do some problem solving and kind of use the experience and knowledge that you have of what the project you're working on and the task that's at hand.
Yeah.
And so as you look at the apprenticeship program, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, so maybe you might have some other ads, but I think a lot of folks are really curious about like what support this has what support mechanisms are in place, whether through Apprenti and Visa, through CompTIA, which is the training provider that really has supported this transition. So you talked about the managers, you talked about the great trainers at CompTIA. What other aspects of the program have you found to be super helpful in this transition for you?
I think for me, the biggest support system is technical guides. Visa has a lot of people experience in IT. So you're looking at 10, 15 plus years. So that's a lot of knowledge for you to learn. So if you are open to communicate and seek advice and seek clarifications, you're always going to find that, because somebody will have, will guide you to success and kind of help you out to the work. And within Visa, we have training materials, we have resources that we can go through. So if you are on a task and you don't know, you have a challenge, you can always talk to your technical guides, you can always talk to your manager, you can always talk to your fellow, the developers, because in my department, QA, so I work with developers when they develop software for, in the IAM system or cloud. So either it's a GCP or AWS. So one of those, you can always have somebody who can help you out. And I haven't, since I've been there, I'm having any issues in terms of if I'm stuck somewhere, I can always, count on somebody to help me out.
And so another question I have for you, which I'm curious. So you're in a cohort of other apprentices. So how are you all connecting with one another, and what has that support network done for you? And how has that been to be in a group with other people that are going through the same thing that you are?
Oh, yes. So we have 9 cohorts in total. We have 5 in Austin. We have 5 in Austin and 4 in Ashburn, Virginia. So we do communicate all the time, especially the ones in Austin. We talk all the time, every day. In my IM team, we have another cohort who works just beside me. So we always share information, and we are on mostly the same track. So whenever we meet, or we can always chat and share information. And we have a network where if you learn anything or find anything useful, we always share with the group so that everybody can learn. And then we meet up every week to study for the certification that we have, because all the 9 of us, we're still studying for our CISA Plus. So we always link up and study together to achieve the success. So it's a team effort. You realize everything is teamwork. And when you open and kind of network with everybody, it makes life much, much easier for everybody. So, yeah.
Well, isn't that truth just in anything, right? Yeah. Maybe not just in an apprenticeship program, for sure. But the team, it's been really cool to see how you all have worked together. And you're right. I mean, it's full time. Like when this is a year-long program, and it's intense. And so it's been neat to see, the bravery and just the dedication that everyone has had. And it's all been really supported by the folks at Visa. So I am seeing a ton of questions in the chat. So Phil, so any closing thoughts that you would have, Kefa, for anybody who's interested in apprenticeship before we get into our kind of open Q&A with our participants?
Sure. I will tell you, if you get a chance, opportunity to join this program, please take it. You won't regret it. It is an amazing program that I know a lot of people have tried to get an IT. Just go look at any application and see what the requirements are in terms of experience and everything. You get a chance to do at Visa. It's very open. Visa, you can learn so many things so long as you have time, and you will expand your knowledge base. And within a year, you learn. In a year, they always say in IT, 1 year is a whole lifetime. So you learn so much. Technology changes, you get to meet so many people, you get to network. So if you get the opportunity, please take it and focus on succeeding, and prepare yourself for the apprenticeship program. Utilize the resources you're given, and you'll be successful. Yeah.
That's great. I love that. So thank you. That's wonderful advice. And if anyone wants to see some of the other apprentices with Visa, you can go to our shameless plug for our LinkedIn or any of our social channels. There's videos from other apprentices that are there as well that I have found equally as inspiring. So just know that there's a really great group that's there, and you can go to our LinkedIn page and see that. Excuse me. So Phil, let's jump into some questions. Do you want to start with some of those questions, and then we can see where we go?
Absolutely. Maybe we can tag team. I'll do one and then you can take the next
Perfect.
one.
Perfect.
I saw a couple of questions, and maybe Patty and Kefa can both answer this from their different perspectives, asking kind of what makes an apprentice stand out. So Kefa, from your perspective, like how you feel you were able to kind of stand out for our recruiting process, and Patty, from your perspective, you know, what made individuals stand out to you through the interview process? Maybe we can come to you first, Patty.
Okay, sure. Yeah. I would say the clear, enthusiasm, aptitude for learning. Again, it was one of those things where we not only had to train ourselves to interview a little bit differently, and a lot of that was having to do with like soft skills, problem solving. Those are the things that really stood out to me and the various candidates that I spoke to.
Great answer. So I'm seeing a lot of questions around how long is the apprenticeship and is it paid and how does that work? So most apprenticeships are around a year to maybe 14 months. And what changes the length of that is the related technical instruction. So the cybersecurity training is probably one of our longest trainings, and it's full-time. And many employers like Visa, they will pay the apprentices during that time, or some other organizations will have like a monthly stipend, but Visa's pays during the related technical instruction, and then you're also paid during the entire apprenticeship program. So it's about a year long. And you do not have to be a military to do cybersecurity. You don't have to have that background. I've gotten a couple of direct questions of, is this required? It is not required. But if you are a veteran, it's certainly helpful because we do have some apprenticeships outside of Visa, but Visa is also, next year, we're going to do a veteran preference hiring for one of the software cohorts. So make sure when you fill out your application, if you do have that background, that you need to let us know. I'm looking at some of these questions. Full-time, it's not part-time. So Phil, this maybe is a question for you and Patty. In what ways does Visa's partnership with Apprenti specifically aim to promote diversity and inclusion within the cyber workforce?
So as I kind of referenced earlier, I think one of the core drivers for us with this was around workforce diversification. And there are like particular demographics that we've been hoping to go after that are priority areas for Visa. So gender within technology is a big one for us. Also looking at kind of underrepresented talent, Black African American talent, Latinx talent. And I think the whole premise of what we're trying to do with the program is to remove some of the barriers of entry for people and really look at what their potential is from a skills perspective. So basically, we've done away with any requirements that may prevent someone from being able to get a role with us. If you think about every time you say we need X amount of experience or we need this particular degree or this particular qualification, what you're doing is effectively locking certain people out of opportunity. And the apprenticeship seeks to remove those barriers essentially. And I think what comes along with that is then understanding that that can be a relatively superficial thing if you just do that in isolation, right? So what we also then do in tandem with that is a lot of work to make sure that managers are understanding the fact that if you're hiring people that are from different backgrounds, they're going to come in with a different perspective, different ways of working, different ways of learning that you may not be used to. So as Patty mentioned previously, we've done a lot of work on line manager education to help them understand and serve those people in their teams to the best of their ability. Accepting the fact that we're all different and we all learn differently, and it may be a different approach than what they're used to with the traditional talent that they were getting out of four-year college programs. We also do a lot of work with the cohort to ensure that people are feeling that they can be fully and authentically themselves when they come to Visa. Because I always say there's kind of no point in hiring difference if you then expect people to assimilate as soon as they hit the organization. So we do a lot of work to really try and make sure that people feel comfortable being fully themselves when they come to work with us. So I think, I don't know if Kevin mentioned, but when the apprentices first joined us for their on-the-job training, we ran a week of kind of acclimation onboarding at Visa, where we got all of our early career programs together, and quite a lot of the focus in that week was around personal storytelling, personal brand, getting people feeling comfortable talking about themselves, and getting to know each other as a group. So there was a lot of social activity there, a lot of training and development workshops that we did with different vendors and training providers that we use. So there's a big emphasis placed on not just hiring for difference, but then making sure that everyone feels comfortable embodying themselves authentically once they're working for Visa too. I don't know if you can talk to that at all from a management perspective, Patty, as well, if you want to build on that at all.
Yeah, sure. I'll just kind of repeat some of what you said there, which is, learning to work with folks that have completely, potentially different backgrounds than a traditional person coming with a four-year degree. Learning, retraining yourself to not have those assumptions on how fast someone can maybe learn something, or assumptions that they already know how to do something. And that's why it's super important to have those technical guides that Kefa referred to. Those are the folks that are involved with apprentices day to day, working with them and really building that really good rapport, and facilitating maybe communication with the rest of the team, right? And also, giving them a little bit of freedom as well, right? To go explore, ask questions, in some ways also, forcing them to go meet new people or ask the questions of other team members that they don't necessarily work with on a day-to-day basis. And that's how, that will help them grow as well.
Great. There is a couple of questions. I'm going to shift a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of questions around the cohort at Visa. So Phil, I've gotten a couple of direct messages. Can you repeat what the process is going to be for next year? And then I think there's also some questions around, is it in person? Is the training virtual? So I think we need maybe cover some of that for you. And then I can speak more broadly about opportunities with Apprenti, because I'm seeing a lot of questions there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to do that. So we work on a kind of cyclical basis with apprenticeship at Visa. So same kind of calendar every year. And right now we're about to go into our recruiting period. So January through March is when we're going to be promoting a program. So running events like this to inform kind of people around what it is that we're doing with apprenticeship, getting applications in, and then screening those applications. So Apprenti asks you to do an application form when you apply on their website. You'll then go through a telephone screening with Apprenti. And then if you get through that stage, you'll come and have 2 interviews with Visa. One of those interviews is focused on soft skills. It's really how you work, how you collaborate, how you problem solve, how you organize yourself, that kind of thing. And then the second set of questions is really around your passion for technology and your aptitude for learning technology. So it will be asking you questions around trends that you might have noticed in the technology space. It might be around a time that you've learned to technology. So that could be a piece of hardware or a piece of software, but it's not asking for any previous experience. It's really just trying to assess how passionate this person is about this space and what's their potential for learning technology. Once you go through that, you will then be hired as a Visa apprentice. You're paid from day one. And I think this is a really core thing, because I think sometimes people wonder, like, if I'm training, am I going to be paid or not? You're paid a salary and you're considered a Visa employee with full benefits from the day that you start your apprenticeship. You'll be in a classroom-based training environment for 4 to 5 months, probably. And during that period of time, you will be fully remote. So it's a classroom-based environment, but a classroom as in the four walls of your screen, rather than an actual physical classroom. You know, that is something that probably is worth thinking about. Like, are you somebody that is going to really struggle with that kind of learning environment or not? Because you know, that can be a challenge for some people to be on a laptop every day for that period of time learning. So you'll be in that period for 4 to 5 months, depending on which program you join. And then you will join Visa to do on-the-job training, or OTJ as we refer to it sometimes. And then you will stop being remote and you will be expected to become a hybrid employee. And what that means for us at Visa is that you do 2 to 3 days worth of office-based work every week. And then you would be expected to be at one of our major sites, so Austin, Atlanta, or Ashburn, as I mentioned previously. Now, we believe very strongly in the hybrid working model, and I think for an apprentice, it's even more valuable because that's how you're going to build your network. That's how you're going to learn. You know, Kevin mentioned the importance of the technical guides in his learning and his development. And I think having that person literally sat next to you, so you're able to turn around to them and say, hey, can you just come over and explain this to me, is really, really powerful. And you lose some of that if you're working remotely. So we will be asking you to do a hybrid working model once you hit OTJ. But prior to that, you will be remote. Hope that answers people's questions.
And I can speak to the larger Apprenti, because I think there was a couple of notes that said, this sounds like a great opportunity. I don't live in one of those locations. So we are national. We are only in the United States. And so right now we are not, I saw a couple of questions of someone was in Canada. So we are only in the United States. There are other registered apprenticeship programs in other countries though. And depending on the uniqueness of the employer that we're working with, most of our training, probably 99%, is virtual. So the related technical instruction is going to be virtual. And then what the on-the-job training and what if it's remote, if it's in person, if they're 2 days a week, if they're 3 days a week, is entirely dependent on the employer's requirements. So as we are going into recruitment, so the process that Phil outlined is typically what we do with other organizations. And so that model and the things that they talked about that Patty and Phil talked about in terms of what they were looking for as they're hiring apprentices is very similar to what other organizations might look for in terms of apprenticeship, because no technical experience is required for the job, right? For this opportunity. But we have opportunities all over the United States. And so as we start to do our recruitment, you will get emails about those opportunities. We delineate who we reach out to based on what you have shared with us in terms of, do you want remote? What locations are you looking at? And what occupations are you looking at? I saw a couple questions. If you do have other certifications, you can actually get credit for prior learning on things. So you just have to make sure that when you do your application, you just upload any of those certificates, any of that education that you have as well. I tried to say that very succinctly because we only have two more minutes. So I think at this point, we want to just I think it's a good time to kind of wrap everything up. I will say, maybe I can start, and then Phil, I think it'd be good for you to say something. And if anybody else says,
sure.
This is such an amazing partnership that we have. I brag about our partnership with Visa. I've bragged about the cohort. I've bragged about what we're doing with them. They are a wonderful organization, and know that there are many, many, many organizations out there that are very similar, that are really looking for great apprentices. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions about Apprenti, and I can put you in touch with the correct person.
Thank you, Natalie. I'm feeling the love. I completely agree. We have a wonderful partnership with Apprenti, and I'm so passionate and excited to be expanding what we're doing with apprenticeship this fiscal year for Visa. One thing I would really like us to close upon, because I can tell there's a lot of people that are job seekers in the audience, is don't hesitate to apply. I can see there's a lot of conversation in the chat where there's a preoccupation with, like, I have this previous experience or that previous experience, or I don't have this certification, or I do have this certification. Apprenticeship is a really fantastic foundation to get into any of these careers regardless of what your background is. So please don't hesitate just based on worrying that you may not have a particular certification or you may not have a particular piece of experience. And for our apprenticeship program, we are not requiring any of those things. Obviously, they may be slightly advantageous through the process if you do have some previous certifications or some previous experience, but it's not a prerequisite. And honestly, the best way for you to start amassing experience and amassing educational experience in this setting is by taking the plunge and applying. And even if you don't join our apprenticeship program, I fully encourage everyone to try and pursue this as a model and as a job opportunity with other organizations as well, which is the whole reason why we're getting involved in National Apprenticeship Week, because this is just such a fantastic opportunity for people. So thank you very much for listening to us. I know it's been a full hour of conversation. Hopefully people have taken a lot from it. We will be following up with some additional materials for people and with the link to apply if people wish to do so. And with that, big thank you from all of us. Thank you for listening, and have a great day, everyone.